All right, let's speak to the Correctional Services Department about the rehabilitation of criminals. Spokesperson Singabako Kumalo joins us from our Durban studio. Thanks for your time. We appreciate it. First off, let's talk about the suspect in this case. He was in jail previously, serving 10 years behind bars for culpable homicide. Can you give us more details about that case?
Thank you, Shahan. We can confirm that this particular individual served time. He was then considered for parole placement, where the parole board approved that he be placed out. Unfortunately, it came to our attention some weeks ago that he had absconded. Abscondment in this sense is where our community corrections officials try to trace a parolee and they cannot locate that person. You will know that a parolee must have a physical address where you can be in a position to locate him or her. So in this instance, he was nowhere to be found. That's when then a case of abscondment was registered and the matter reported to the SAPS. It then happened that when we reported the matter, the SAPS had already started linking this particular individual to a particular offense. Then we had to work together with them trying to trace him down.
So this culpable homicide that he was behind bars for, can you give me the details of that?
Yes, it's a case that he did serve time for it. He was given 10 years, and then he was then eligible to be considered for parole. Hence, then, the parole board had to go through that, and then they deemed it fit that he be, placed on parole. I wouldn't want to go into the details of that particular case so that we can at least respect the victims to that effect.
So how many years did he actually spend behind bars then?
Our parole system works in a way that you need to serve the minimum required time, which is half of the sentence, before you are considered for parole. And what we need to explain is that having served half doesn't mean that automatically you are granted parole placement, but our specialist, here I'm referring to your psychologist, your social workers, spiritual caregivers, and others, will have to submit reports, which will then have to tie up with the correctional sentence plan that is drawn up when a person is admitted in a correctional facility. It's all that which is then put together and is submitted before the parole board. Then the parole board will go through that correctional sentence plan vis-a-vis what is contained in the profile, just to ensure that at least you did do the programs which were identified for you and that the risk element is reduced. They will then make that particular decision. Why we had to come up with the structure of parole boards? More often in the past, we blame that you cannot be the player and the ref, meaning you incarcerate people, give them program, you then say now they are ready to be placed out. Hence, we needed to have parole boards. But we do admit that at times, people are placed on parole, and unfortunately, others go back to the life of crime, and there are different reasons to that effect.
Yeah, so, the family of the person who died in this culpable homicide case, were they actually consulted during this parole board process, and how do they feel about this man being released?
How it works, again, is that before a person is placed on parole, there must be what we call a victim-offender dialogue, victim-offender mediation. Is a process to, trying to put together both the perpetrator and the victim so that they could find means, they could start talking and work towards forgiveness. We also understand that it's not something that, you can do it once off and hope that you will succeed. Other people take time to forgive, others may not forgive, at all. But we do it in a way that so people will know and get a sense that, okay, this person who offended me did serve a time. These were the programs that he did. He's now back. And also to reduce the element of shock that the perpetrator is now back on the street. You didn't even know that this person, had been released, from custody. It's therefore important. It's important that, as correctional services, we do at least try to make it possible that the victim and the perpetrator start talking and move towards that particular process of reconciliation.
So let's talk more about what the police minister had to say on the sidelines of the SONA debate today. Becky Cele telling the media that this suspect was not supposed to be released on parole. Is he right? Where is he getting that from?
I wouldn't want to respond directly on what the Minister of Police said. For us, what is critical is to ensure that we do follow our policies and procedures which are there. And it's very clear from our side, where, for instance, let's say someone is eligible to be considered for parole placement and other parties are not happy about that, or they have certain questions, they are able to participate in that particular process. And should it happen that indeed certain things are not clear, there is still an option of a review. But we always try by all means to ensure that we follow those processes and that we involve not only the victims, but in this instance, even secondary victims. Hence, we are even now calling, greater community participation in our processes, even traditional leaders, because we've realized that when you release a person, you release a person back to the community which is still angry at this person, and they will find it hard to accept it. Hence, a number of our parolees do experience challenges where communities do not want to accept them back. They are still stigmatized. We even have instances where families do not want to see their own members. So as a department, we've decided that we need to do more in terms of public education, just to get people to understand the intentions and purposes of parole, because parole placement is not the end of a sentence, but it merely says that this person will now serve the remainder of a sentence, out there in the community. Therefore, this person needs the assistance of the community as well to adjust.
So this is what I don't understand, because the community in Cape Town is saying they didn't even know this man was in the area, so they didn't know he was there, firstly. Secondly, you say he was missing for quite some time now. Were police actually notified about this when you realized that he was missing?
I can confirm that immediately when our officials could not trace this particular person, they reported that. They went back there a few days later, still they could not find him. That's when then a case was reported to the SAPS. The reason being is that before you are placed out, you give us a physical address. And when we are not there, therefore, we need to look for you. And if we can't find you, then you have transgressed on your parole conditions. Our officials did report the matter immediately when they could not trace this person. Therefore, the allegation that he had been missing for over a year, I don't think that is true.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. You appreciate it. That is Singabako Khumalo, spokesperson for the Correctional Services Department.